On a busy stretch of Colorado Boulevard in East Pasadena, C&H Surplus has been selling the cast-offs of society for years.
The aisles are filled with high-tech treasures, leftover oscilloscopes, pressure valves, radar components, and highly tooled machine parts. For a techno-geek like me, this is heaven. It is at once an expression of ultimate possibility, just think of all the things you could make out of this stuff, as well as a museum of failed machines. It is a record of technology that had its day, served humanity, and moved on to neatly ordered stacks in East Pasadena. Every last piece piled in these bins and laying in the aisles had to be planned by someone. Every screw, washer, and faceplate was designed. Battalions of draftsmen, tool makers, die cutters, and lathe operators had to ponder each of these pieces, how it would work, its tolerances, what it would look like, what it would be made of, where it would be made, and ultimately, how long it would last. And when we think about the history of technology, we have to come to the conclusion that this process of designing our technological environment is increasing in pace and intensity. Think about it. The lowly wagon with 2 or 4 wheels remained more or less unchanged for virtually thousands of years. But since the arrival of the automobile in the 19th century, the wagon has nearly disappeared, while the numbers, kinds, styles, sizes, and purposes of our internal combustion monsters continue to explode. There's a life cycle to technology. Someone has to think up an interesting idea. Then the idea has to be tested, planned, researched, and tried out before it can be manufactured, promoted, and sold in the public marketplace. That life cycle has accelerated to the point where the manufacture, promotion, and distribution of that technology moves almost by itself, while the real bottleneck is in the design and testing of that project. Like Darwin predicted for biology, this technology goes through a kind of evolution too. The more successful models thrive and grow, while older, weaker, less feature-filled models fall by the wayside. But something else has happened as well, something that expresses a quintessential California-ness. That is that this failed technology very often finds a second life. It turns up in contexts that may not have been originally envisioned, and it is used for things that it was never intended for. There is an improvisational quality about this process, more jazz than classical. It happens when an artist sees other possibilities in that failed technology. He sees beauty in those precision-milled surfaces, in those highly designed components. And while they may no longer lift airplanes off runways or control the pressure of steam throughout a cargo ship, they may find a new life that combines both the references of that old technology and the implications of its new purposes. When he died earlier this year, 93-year-old Altadena iconoclast Gereyer Zarathian had amassed on his 45-acre property one of the most unusual collections of art anywhere. Zarathian was friend with everyone from Buckminster Fuller and Andy Warhol to Bob Dylan and Nobel laureate Richard Feynman. He took the cast-offs of technological society and retooled them into his own personal zoo. Constructed of doll parts, lawn furniture, and other found objects, Zarathian remade technology into a fascinating and whimsical world. And here, on the plaza of the Museum of Contemporary Art in downtown Los Angeles, this massive sculpture by Nancy Rubens teeters over the entryway to the museum like a demented bird. At first glance, it looks like an assemblage of junk, random pieces of metal wiled together. But when you look closer, you begin to realize that it is made entirely of airplane pieces. Aeronautical designs, wing parts, engine fittings, control surfaces. What was once a high-tech aircraft soaring in the Southern California skies is now an intriguing sculpture floating once again in the imaginations of visitors to this museum. Failed technology resurrected as art. In earlier eras, it was the craftsmanship that made the artifact valuable. The beautiful hand-tooled details of Pasadena's renowned craftsman bungalows, for example. The design ideas were sophisticated, to be sure, but they were meant only for these graceful, livable buildings. We're not likely to see this house chopped up and turned into a sculpture. In short, the old formula called for simple functional design and classy, timeless craftsmanship. The newer formula calls for extensive, sophisticated designs that can be stamped out by the millions. It brought the price of those consumer goods down, but in the process, we lost a love of the artifact just for what it is. In one sense, any retooling of failed technology implies a kind of irony, too. Nancy Rubin's airplane, for example, now flying again in its own fashion in the courtyard of the Museum of Contemporary Art, or Jerayer Zorathian's fantastic figures on his property in Altadena. But it also implies sadness and nostalgia. Think of the eagerness with which all this technology was originally designed and put into practice. Think of the optimism it expressed. Think of the possibilities the people who first encountered this technology felt when they first opened that box, laid their hands on it, put a battery in it, or plugged it in and turned the key or switched it on. Now in places like CH Surplus in Pasadena and in Goodwill stores and secondhand emporiums all over this state, that unique brand of California optimism is replaced by shelves of failed technology, waiting for someone to fashion it into a piece of ironic art, to sell it in the aisles of stores like C&H Surplus, or to simply turn it into landfill.
In any case, this bright and shiny technology has long since faded, only to be replaced by an endless wave of newness. I'm John Beaupre.